How are you there, art students and YouTube art aficionados? So let's talk today about a word that I use a lot. It's a word, I didn't make it up, but I use it quite a bit. And what I want to go over is artsy fartsy. So again, I didn't make it up, but it's just a term, and you can put this in your notes. By the way, if you haven't got your notebook out, get that out, set it up in a Cornell notes fashion, writing notes on one side, thinking on the left side. And if you are not one of my students and you're just here to learn about artsy fartsy business, well, go ahead down there and click in the likes. It doesn't cost you a thing. So artsy fartsy, you can write this definition down, pause if you need to, I'll wait. Artsy fartsy is a term that I'll use quite a bit to describe something that is pretentious, I guess is the best word. Artsy fartsy describes something that is very esoteric, something that doesn't necessarily appeal to the masses. So artsy fartsy describes a lot of art that when you would look at it, you might think, I don't get it. So there's lots of things that are artsy fartsy. And we'll use modern art as an example. Modern art is something that generally people would think is artsy fartsy. Opera is artsy fartsy. Jazz music, ballet, artsy fartsy. So that's the term that I use quite a bit. It's a little bit of derogatory. It's a little bit of like, looking down your nose a bit, which is funny because that's what we're making fun of artsy fartsy people for doing. So when people like me, regular folks, say, look at this artsy fartsy business, I'm kind of looking down my nose at somebody for being very pretentious. When a person who is very pretentious or artistic or artsy fartsy, they look at people like me and say, look at this heathen, this Philistine, this unwashed curmudgeon. So there's a bit of, classism and snobbery involved in the arts. And it just is what it is. It doesn't make anybody a bad person. It's just, there you go. So here we'll use the example for you. I am 100% certain that if I were to ask you to describe your favorite style of music, you would be able to tell me that. Oh, I like rock and roll. Oh, I like hip hop. I like, you would have a very specific style of music in mind that is your style of music. And if I were to ask you about other styles, you would say, no, that's terrible. I don't like that. You are being pretentious or snobbery. You are saying that your opinion is the valid one and other people's opinions are not. That's what artsy fartsy means. So you're artsy fartsy too there, don't you? Yeah. So here's your little cartoon of your typical artsy fartsy. So, this is art student. This is your modern day art student, and which is of course what I was when I went to school. The uniform of the artist that my peers wore back in the day is different than the uniform, but everybody wears their little badges and their little uniforms to demonstrate who they are. So if you're wearing your Red Wing boots and your Carhartts, you're telling the world a little bit about who you are. If you're wearing your I don't even know what's a good style. If you're wearing your Yeezys and your jeans, I don't know brands. So your Levi's, I don't know. If you're wearing that stuff, you're telling the world about who you are. So artsy fartsy is a mindset. It's a philosophy. So this is a little still from one of the greatest movies ever, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If you haven't seen it, you need to do that. You have homework now. And in this scene, in this part of the movie, Ferris and his friends, Cameron and what's her name? I can't remember. Put it in the comments below. So they decide they're going to skip school that day. What's her name? Oh, it's right on the tip of my tongue. They decide they're going to skip school and just have a day. So one of the things they do is they go to the Chicago Art Museum, one of the greatest art museums in America and the world, really. And they're looking at the artwork, and they have this pose. It's a very artsy, fartsy pose to regard something with that critical eye. So this is the perfect example of artsy fartsy. When you are looking at something critically and thoughtfully and forming an opinion about that. So that's what they're doing. They're at the museum playing at being artsy fartsy. So there's lots of artwork that might fall into this category of what I call artsy fartsy. So I cannot believe the name of this artist just flew out of my brain too. I'm having some mental difficulties this morning. It'll come to me in a second. So when you look at these paintings, these color field paintings, many people would look at that and say, what's that? I don't get it. That's dumb. But other people are going to look at it and think, this is the greatest art ever. So when you're talking about artsy fartsy, one of the things that this presumes is you have a certain amount of knowledge prior to viewing the work. So why can't I think of this guy's name? Frustrating. So when you go to see this work, unless you have a formal art education, unless you understand, unless you intellectually know what this artist was trying to do, you look at it and you think, I don't get it. I don't understand it. What's this all about? It's just a big bunch of colors. True, that's true. However, with a certain amount of art knowledge and a certain amount of historical information, you know what this artist is trying to accomplish, and you know how these images were made and why they were made and when they were made. And you can take that existing information that you have and you can formulate a new idea and a new opinion of what these mean. So some artwork requires you to have a specialized art knowledge, and not just visual arts, performing arts as well. So we'll use jazz. Jazz is very artsy fartsy. Jazz requires that you know something about music ahead of time, that you understand the structure of jazz, and that jazz music is structured differently than traditional music. You have to know that before you can appreciate it. Opera, ballet, those are high-end artsy fartsy art forms. In order to appreciate them, you have to know ahead of time about the work. And that's kind of what artsy fartsy means. It assumes a certain amount of previously acquired knowledge. It's difficult to go into a museum and to look at this work by, dang it, why can't I remember his name? And to see this work and to appreciate it, to understand it without that previous knowledge. So let's talk a little bit about artsy fartsy. So these two people, Dorothy and Herbert Vogel, these are just regular folks. Nothing special about them. They're not rich. Both of them, they worked, government jobs making, a modest middle income wage. But these two people are hugely influential on what we now consider art, what we consider fine art, modern art. And they did that because they took their money and invested it in artists. So they purchased artwork from young artists. And they purchased it, for reasonable sums, like a young artist might charge. So if I'm 25 years old getting started and I have a painting that I want to sell, and this couple want to buy my painting for $2,000, I'm happy as I can be. But here's what happens. When these two purchase the work, all of a sudden, just because they bought it, now my work goes from $2,500 to $25,000. So these influential people, and there's a lot of influential people, artsy fartsy people, that over the years are the arbiters and the tastemakers and the judges of what is art. So when you go into a museum and you see artwork, most of the time, the reason you're seeing that artwork is because people like this, artsy fartsy people, decided this is good and this is not good. So when this couple invested in your artwork and collected your artwork, they were giving it their stamp of approval. Then subsequently, they have loaned and given their art collection to museums around America, especially. So now, when you go into a museum and you see an artist and you're seeing, I don't know, what's this? The reason you're seeing it is because these two people and others like them, not just only these two, but other people like them, are the ones who decided this is good, check, and this is not good, X, right? So when you're starting to think about artsy fartsy and you're starting to think about, knowledge and information and culture, and it really all kind of becomes very convoluted. So here's two terms. You can put these in your notes. You got highbrow and lowbrow. So this kind of goes along with what I'm talking about when I say artsy fartsy. Highbrow is artwork which is artwork that goes in galleries and museums and is that is high art. So highbrow equals high art. Lowbrow is kind of, and both of these are sort of derogatory terms, don't get me wrong. So it's just kind of the same thing of saying artsy fartsy, which is kind of derogatory, meaning I'm not saying it in a nice way. So when I say something's artsy fartsy, I'm not saying, oh, that's good. I'm saying that it's not good. It's artsy fartsy. And highbrow and lowbrow are kind of the same way. So when I say something's highbrow or lowbrow, that's kind of a derogatory term. So lowbrow means artwork that is not intellectually or culturally important. So there are plenty of things that are art that are not considered high art or artsy fartsy art. So tattoos and comic books and pop music and I don't know. I'm not hating on Miley Cyrus. Miley Cyrus, you're great if you're watching. But Miley Cyrus is considered lowbrow. So it's not fine cultured art. Does it mean it's not art? No, it is art. But is it high art? Is it highbrow? And the answer is no. So when you're thinking about, and I've noticed that when I'm watching my videos back, I notice I'm going, I got to stop doing that. But now that I've said it, that I've noticed it, now you've noticed it too. Sorry about that. So lowbrow art is artwork that reflects an uncultured or uneducated view. So whether it is pop music or pop music versus classical chamber music, or twerking versus ballet, or a tattoo versus a fine art print. There's artsy fartsy highbrow, and there is lowbrow. All of it, though, meets our definition of what is art. We talked about that in another video. Check it out. So highbrow versus lowbrow, I'll use those terms occasionally, but mostly in this class, we talk about highbrow stuff, and I'll use the term artsy fartsy mostly. So here's your adventures of highbrow and lowbrow. You got the guy, the egghead on the left over there with his glass of wine. This is a very robust Merlot. And then you got your lowbrow over there with his beer can, his caveman unibrow, I don't know, whatever. So anyway, your highbrow and your lowbrow there. This is just, I can't even remember what magazine this was in, but it talks about highbrow versus lowbrow. So it gives you different options of stuff, like highbrow clothing versus lowbrow, or highbrow furniture versus lowbrow, or, you know, what is cultured and intellectual versus what is uncultured and common. So, you know, even in the, I almost went political. I'm going to do it a little tiny bit. You know, in the United States, there's lots of commentary on, you know, the cultural elites versus the common man. So this dialogue of highbrow versus lowbrow, cultured and sophisticated versus everyday America, you know, there's a conflict in those two cultures, and it carries on through all kinds of stuff. Art is not the only thing, but there is a difference between what we consider to be cultural and intellectual and elite versus what we consider to be regular commonplace stuff. So you got your highbrow versus your lowbrow. Oops. And we'll finish up with this. This is a little diagram of music. So on the left side, you got lowbrow. On the right side, you got highbrow. So like on the lowbrow end, you got Motorhead. And on the highbrow end, you got Led Zeppelin and Patti Smith. I'll tell you that I love Motorhead. Motorhead is awesome. But I also love David Bowie and Patti Smith. So there's lowbrow music and highbrow music. Now, there's another axis that goes up and down here from underrated musicians to overrated musicians. By the way, I don't know who made this diagram. I just pulled it up because it was interesting. So like this diagram says that Jimi Hendrix is overrated and that George Harrison and Nick Cave are underrated. Yeah, Nick Cave is underrated. Check out some Nick Cave. Pull up the YouTubes right now and check out some Nick Cave. It's great. George Harrison, great. So I might agree with some of these a little bit. Jimi Hendrix is great also, but is he overrated? Maybe so. So this is a nice little diagram. It's fun to look at, to check out some bands that maybe you know of or have listened to. They're a little older probably for you. But yeah, I thought it was kind of a cool little graphic to demonstrate the difference between lowbrow and highbrow, and then it also does overrated and underrated, which is kind of a clever little diagram to show thinking. So this is exactly the type of thing that the left side of your notebook, where you're thinking something like this, man, how brilliant is this? Somebody put some time into this thing. So yeah, here we'll finish up with this, and this is a looks like a Chevy, I think, a Chevy van with the rock group Kiss painted on the side of it. Man, oh man, there is nothing more lowbrow than this, but it's fantastic. It is amazing. So artwork comes in all different forms. There's lowbrow to highbrow. Highbrow means that you're going to see it in a museum. Lowbrow means you're going to see it in a parking lot. But still, when I look at this, it's amazing. It's wonderful. It's fantastic. I'm not trying to, when I say something is lowbrow or when I say something is artsy fartsy, I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just commenting on where it fits in our culture. So yeah, this van is wonderful. So whoever did this, thumbs up for this thing. It's so lowbrow that it actually is starting to come around and be highbrow again. That's how far on the lowbrow spectrum this is. It's fantastic. I love it. So anyway, that's just like a little tidbit to kind of talk to you about what we're doing. We're getting close to the end of all our introductory business here. Pretty soon we're going to be getting into our meat and potatoes of the class, talking about specific cultures and specific artworks and taking notes. Again, make sure that you've watched that video that Cornell Notes, the very first one, because your notebook is a key ingredient in your grade in this class. Be sure that you are taking good notes. So, hey, listen, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Be sure to take care of yourself, wear a mask, social distance, especially if you have older relatives and friends and teachers, because we're more susceptible to the virus than you all are, apparently, it seems. So, take care of your elderly folks around. I think that's all I got. See you next time.